This latest video is going to be all about my 64 Mercury Comet. The idea behind this is going to be, can you match the power to weight performance on a budget with an old muscle car, say against maybe a bone stock 2021 Mach 1? We're going to find out. I'm going to show you kind of the plan, how much power it's going to make. We're going to go out and weigh this thing. I'll show you what it makes in the dyno right now, and then we're going to see if we can increase the performance to match the power to weight of a new 5.0 Mustang on a budget. Check it out. For those of you new to my channel who are unfamiliar, this is my 1964 Mercury Comet. We'll pop the hood, I'll show you the engine, and then we'll hop over to a baseline dyno video. So this is not the original engine. This is a 302 Windsor-based small block Ford out of, say, I think it's like a mid-80s Ford truck. All that it has done to it that would be different with how it came back then is essentially it's got some sort of aftermarket distributor. Don't worry about that. It does have a dual plane intake manifold. I've got a Edelbrock 650 carburetor on it. And that's about it. It is a 5-speed manual transmission. I did swap in a T5. It's a 355 rear gear, but otherwise stock cam, stock heads, stock exhaust manifolds. This is a bone stock 302. So let's slap it on the dyno and see what it makes. All right, now that we're back from the dyno, the results are not super exciting, I guess I will say. This car is relatively fun to drive because it makes a lot of torque down low, and it's light. So the big thing we're gonna talk about here is power to weight, okay? Because a lot of new cars now, they make a lot of power, but they weigh a lot. If you just go on Google and you Google like weight 2023 Mustang, you're gonna get numbers anywhere from like 3,750 up close to 4,000 pounds, depending on the option. So the big thing here is kind of what you feel seat of the pants. So you could have something that weighs a lot more, but makes a lot more power, and it'll roughly feel the same as something that weighs less and makes less power. The other big thing that I want to point out here is making 460 horsepower in a stock Mustang with all the modern creature comforts and all the nannies that help keep you between the white lines is great, but something like this, you can make a lot less power and it can feel a lot faster because this car does not have power brakes. It does not have power steering. It is a manual transmission. There is no traction control. There is no rev limiter. There is nothing to save you, okay? So when you make power in something like this, it's gonna feel a lot more raw, and that's gonna be the goal of this video. So let's head to the scales. Let's see how much it weighs, and then we can talk about performance parts and kind of what we're gonna have to do to get to the power levels. You know, is it feasible? Because I want to try and do this without adding like a nitrous turbocharger, supercharger, any of that stuff that costs money. I want to do everything on the cheap. So let's head to the scales. This thing always starts for me, no problem. Hopefully today should be no different with these Edelbrocks. And it's dead cold here. Make sure we're neutral. Just give it maybe 1-2 squirts of fuel, and starts right up. Never used the scales before, so I downloaded the free app for my phone. It's from Cat Scales. Basically, it allows you to put in your information. You can put your credit card in if you want. Go there 24 hours a day, weigh your car, and it will email you a PDF printout of your weight. All right, we're back from the scales. Really easy experience. I downloaded the app. It cost me 13 bucks, and now I can take any of my cars to the scale. So we will be weighing the Mach 1 at some point because I'm curious how much it weighs. And that will, well, we'll do that another time. But basically, I will flash up the numbers on the screen here so you can both see the weight, and you'll see the weight because how I positioned it on the front and the rear axles. So this vehicle weighed 2,940 pounds. As it sits with about a 3/4 tank of gas in it. To be honest, a little bit more than I thought it was going to weigh. I was hoping it was going to weigh closer to 2,800, But what that means is we might have to make just a little bit more power to hit our goals. When I looked at the weight distribution, if you do the math, I think it's like 58% front, 42% rear. So anything we can do to get weight off the front is gonna be a good thing. So I'll kind of try and come up with some ideas on how to do that. But let's run some quick math here and let's figure out roughly how much power do we have to make to get close to a stock, not a twin turbo, a stock 2021 Mach 1. Okay, to keep things totally fair, this is the original dyno graph of my 2021 Mach 1. The only thing that was done is it had a resonator delete, and it made 441 horsepower and 389 foot-pounds of torque. So this is a manual car. I went online, I looked, and I got a bunch of different numbers for what a Mach 1 premium manual transmission should weigh. And the average of all the different sites I could find was 3870. So what that comes out to is if you take the horsepower rear wheel divided by the weight, you get 0.114 horsepower, rear wheel horsepower per pound. With torque, you can do the same thing. And that, basically, these are the numbers we're trying to match or exceed these two numbers right here. Now with the Comet, we know, because I baseline dynoed it, don't look at this down here, it's a bunch of funkiness. 3 back-to-back pulls. The best that it made was 167. The best torque that it made was right around 270, we'll call it. Okay, this is the baseline. So obviously, if we divided that by that, it's gonna be much less than this. But the idea is, what do we need to do? And I'll do the math here in a second and show you how much power do we need to make and torque to the rear wheels to exceed a 2021 Mach 1. Drum roll, please. These are our numbers. Okay, so the goal for the Comet is gonna be to make 335 rear wheel horsepower and at least 294 foot-pounds of torque. Now, as we can see, this thing is pretty torquey to begin with. It makes all this torque and it just dies off. So chances are what we're gonna see here, hopefully, is we're gonna see an increase in torque, but we probably will lose down here, but it'll ride up further up here. And again, we were only revving this thing to 5,000 RPM, hoping we can bump that at least another 800 to 1,000, okay, is gonna be the goal with this build. And we are gonna try and see if we can get the same power to weight. So 335 is the number and 294 is the torque. How are we gonna get there? The way we're gonna get there is we're gonna focus on 3 things. We are gonna focus on getting air into the engine. We are gonna focus on what we do once the air is inside of the engine and getting it out of the engine. So for getting it in, we are gonna keep, for right now, that same Edelbrock 650. Hopefully that is not a choke point, but you know, we'll see. A while back, I purchased this bad boy right here. This is a Edelbrock Victor Jr. single plane intake for the 302. I've had this thing laying around for a little while now, and basically this is a pretty racy manifold, if I'm being completely honest, for a 302. But we want to make that power, and we want to make that power up high where we're not making it. So my hope is that this intake manifold is going to help us. Okay, we're probably going to lose some torque down low, but we've got a manual transmission car. We don't have to worry about a torque converter or anything like that. Number 2, and this is the biggie, cylinder heads. We are gonna remove these stock cylinder heads, and I have got a scratch and dent special for a grand total of $300 each. So $600 for a set of Flowtech cylinder heads. And I will show you some pictures right now. Now look, maybe I'm gonna catch some flack in the comments. There are more expensive, we'll call it, cylinder heads out there, okay? TrickFlow makes an excellent set of cylinder heads. So does AFR, okay? But we are trying to do this on a budget. This is an intake that I've had laying around sitting in the box for probably a year now. I was able to call up Flowtech and pick out a set of their heads. I explained to them what I was doing. I got a set of their 180cc heads with a 58cc chamber, meaning we should bump the compression ratio up, okay? So again, once that air comes in through that new manifold, we want it to be working for us, and I really think that those aluminum cylinder heads are gonna help in a multitude of ways. They should flow better, they've got bigger valves, they're lighter, and it should bump the compression ratio up. Now the only part of the puzzle that I haven't quite figured out yet is what camshaft I'm gonna choose. So I'm gonna make a lot of calls and try and tell them what I'm trying to do, the car, the fact that it's a manual, it doesn't have any power brakes or anything like that. So we can probably go relatively radical with the cam. We're gonna do a cam on this thing, and then I've gotta find headers that will fit a Comet. Let me flip the camera around and show you what I'm dealing with here. These Comets are a super tight engine bay, and it makes it difficult to install long tube headers. Let me show you what I mean. So the engine's still warm. I don't want to reach my hands down in there too far, but these shock towers are so close to where the stock manifolds are. Maybe a little bit better on this side, but short of cutting these towers out completely, there is just not a lot of room in there. But we are gonna ditch those cast manifolds. We're gonna get something a little bit racier that flows better. And again, intake, cam, exhaust, heads. My goal is with that, I'm hoping we can get somewhere close to this 335 number. And I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but honestly, we may or may not make it. We're gonna try our best. I'm gonna make a game time decision of how much it's gonna cost to do a little bit of port work potentially and unshroud the valves in these cylinder heads. We may or may not do that, but again, that is the goal, and we're gonna try and do this on a budget. Got those heads, they're literally a scratch and dent special. Flowtech kind of hooked me up really inexpensively, so I gotta take a look at them. I think there's a couple little things I might need to address before I can't just throw them on the car just as they are, but that's why I got such a steep discount. I'm counting this intake manifold as like almost free because I've had it laying around forever, but I'm gonna search Facebook Marketplace, Craigslist, KSL, whatever, to try and get the rest of the parts that I can. If I can get stuff that's like lightly used or somebody wants to give me a discount, that's how we're gonna try and build this. And the goal at the end of the day is gonna be that 335 number. So this is probably not gonna happen immediately because when you do something on a budget, you can't just run out and buy everything all at once. So we're gonna chip away a little bit at a time. But I hope you're interested in this, and I think it's gonna be really fun to see how it turns out. And we'll weigh it at the end too, to see how much we gain or lose. Hopefully we lose some weight off the front end of this thing with those aluminum cylinder heads. But hit me up in the comments, let me know what you think about this idea. And if you have any ideas on how I can meet my goal, please don't forget, I know this gets old, but don't forget, like and subscribe for me. It really helps me out. And I read all your comments. I try to get back to you and help you guys any way I can with your projects. So we will talk about more, and you'll see more of this car next time on Truck and Roll.